I'm pleased to be able to join you in the new role that I have as Ambassador for Global Women's Issues, because the role in and of itself is a demonstrable commitment on the part of the United States to ensure that these issues are fully integrated in the overall work of our foreign policy. That means not that the Women's Office is an outpost at the State Department, but that its work is fully integrated with all of the regional bureaus that span the globe, whose efforts deal with some of the toughest issues that are relevant to the countries in which they work. But also that the Economics Bureau, the Human Rights Bureau, the Trafficking Office, and so many more understand that they cannot fulfill the purposes to which they are to address unless women's issues are appropriately incorporated. So let me just go through some of the ways in which we are doing that, recognizing that the role of women is absolutely critical to driving economic growth. And we know that broad-based economic growth has to be a key strategy for poverty alleviation and for sustainable ability, and that is a core principle of the President's policy directive as it has gone forward in terms of development as well. Today, thanks in large measure also to the private sector and to so much work in the NGO community, there is a mountain of data, and it spans the communities represented here, the World Bank, the United Nations, so many think tanks, and so many others. And what does that data show? It shows a positive correlation between investments in women and girls and poverty alleviation and the general prosperity of countries. The World Economic Forum just released its 2010 Gender Gap report, and I was part of the U.S. release activities having to do with this report. Now, why does one of the major corporate communities, the World Economic Forum, do an annual report on the gender gap? Certainly nobody views them as a women's organization. But they do so because they have found it is so important to measure the gender, men and women, and their relationship to 4 measurements in a given country. What is the gap in terms of health survivability and general health between educational attainment, economic empowerment, and political empowerment? And what they have found that in those countries where the gap is closest to being closed, and in no country is it closed, in no country are men and women equal, certainly in these 4 areas, very basic areas, I might add. But in those where that gap is most narrowed, those countries are far more prosperous. Those countries are far more economically competitive. And it's also interesting to note that that gap is closer to being closed, and over the years as this measurement's been done, in health and education, but hardest to being closed and the least closed in political empowerment, and the next doing better than political empowerment, but still not where it should be in terms of economic participation. Moreover, women run small and medium-sized businesses are known to be an accelerator in terms of economic growth. As one CEO has said, the lowest hanging fruit that could be picked for high-yield investments in terms of their growth potential. Now, we have seen, and many of you have been a part of, the extraordinary transformative impact of microcredit and what it has done through training to literally lift up the lives of millions and millions, particularly of the poorest women around the globe. And we need to continue to make that tool readily available, but I think also to enhance greater financial inclusion and to find greater ways to ensure that these micro businesses can achieve whatever possibility they might have to grow beyond. But we also know that women-run SMEs, being that economic accelerator, cannot fulfill the potential that they represent because of the extraordinary number of barriers that women confront. Barriers that also impede the potential that these kinds of investments would have because of the multiplier effect that women represent in terms of how they spend their income for their families and their communities. Now, these barriers, roadblocks, things you are familiar with, everything from access to training, to mentors, to technology, to the kind of ability to access markets, to property rights, to a lot of the regulations in countries that severely discriminate women from unleashing their potential, from helping to enable them to start a business. And one of the things we have been doing in our work is to ensure that those economic platforms, you heard Raj mention the role of trade, something that you keenly are aware of in this community, whether it's APEC or whether it's the Africa Growth Opportunity Act, or whether it's the kind of trade compacts we have with Latin America. Women historically have done the worst in being able to establish themselves in the kinds of markets to take advantage of these kinds of agreements. And during the AGOA ministerial that took place in the other Washington several months ago, we brought top female entrepreneurs from all of the African countries who participate in this platform to be able to participate also in the ministerial. And I must say their ideas were some of the top ideas that came out for how to make this work better. And then to have the kind of exposure to training that was provided when they went to Kansas City together to be able to grow their skill set and have now gone home to create strategies within their countries. And we are working very significantly with the private sector to develop the kind of partnerships and collaborations that will enable women to overcome the roadblocks that they confront. There was a reference to tech women, which came out of a visit that I made several months ago to Silicon Valley, where once again I discovered that so many of the women in technology today are so eager to share their skills and bring others in the developing world up to a level where it can have tremendous payoffs for them. And I know Microsoft it will be a considerable partner in that effort as well. So what does all of this mean? Well, when we don't tap the potential of women in terms of their economic prospects, we get the kind of statistic that was very paramount in our discussions recently in Japan, which is in the Asia-Pacific region alone, that region is shortchanged in excess of $40 billion because the potential of women is not being tapped. So this is a very important growth strategy in terms of international development, and it's obviously very important to creating jobs here at home and opportunities because of the importance of emerging markets to our own country.